All right, we are back, and I have the picture for you of what you would see if you had a physical book. So this is the chart that was in the front of these readers. If you take a look at it, you can see why Little Man was so upset. So at first he was upset because the book was dirty. And we already learned earlier in the chapter that Little Man really liked being clean, right? The whole walk to school, he was making sure, or trying to make sure, that his clothes stayed nice and clean and neat and tidy. Obviously, until the bus that carried the white children came by and blasted dust at them. All right, but now Little Man is very upset because of what he has seen on the inside of this book. So you can see here at the top of this chart, so this would be printed in the front cover of the book. When the book was new in 1922, it was given to a white student. Okay, so at this time, remember, race was really important, and race just means black or white. So did you have black skin or did you have white skin? And they kept people separate based on simply that fact. Okay, and if you look down this column, so the book started out new, and as you keep going down, you will notice that it's white, 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 white. And as you go down, that the condition of the book gets slowly worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until, so it started new, then it was excellent, it was very good, it was good. And by the time the condition of the book was poor, well, suddenly it wasn't considered good enough for these white students anymore. And now it has been given to the black students, to the black school. So they're getting the cast-offs of the white school from the white children. So they've had it, they've used it, they've decided it's no longer in good enough condition for the white people, and now it is going to the black children at their school. Okay, so that's the first issue, is that these black children are being treated like they only deserve the cast-offs. They deserve the books that are about to go to the garbage. Another thing that Little Man is upset about is this last word right here. All right, now this last word, I'm going to say it out loud in the context of this book because some of the characters in this book are going to use this word, but I want you to know right now that this is a very, very offensive, terrible, and horrible thing to call somebody who has black skin, okay? And the reason that it's terrible is because when the African American people were enslaved, their white owners would use this word to call them. They would call them Negroes, or sometimes you will hear it said nigger. And there's a few things wrong with that. Well, first of all, they're just being announced by the color of their skin, because in the eyes of the white people, that's all that mattered, was that somebody had black skin, and in their minds, that made them less than human. Okay? Another thing, if you just call somebody by the color of their skin, you're not even using their name. You're not even recognizing that that's a human being, that that's a person. Okay? So, even in this column, something very, very offensive has been written about these black children. Okay, and we're going to see Little Man's and then Cassie's reaction to this. So I'm going to keep reading now. The blank lines continued down to line 20, and I knew that they had all been reserved for black students. A knot of anger swelled in my throat and held there. But as Miss Crocker directed Little Man to bend over the whipping chair, I put aside my anger and jumped up. "Miss Crocker, don't, please," I cried. Miss Crocker's dark eyes warned me not to say another word. "I know why he done it." "You want part of this switch, Cassie?" "No," I said hastily. "I just want to tell you how come Little Man done what he done." "Sit down," she ordered, as I hurried toward her with the open book in my hand. Holding the book up to her, I said, "See, Miss Crocker, see what it says. They give us these old books when they don't want 'em no more." She regarded me impatiently, but did not look at the book. "Now how could he know what it says? He can't read." "Yes'm, he can. He been reading since he was 4. He can't read all them big words, but he can read them columns. See what's in the last row. Please look, Miss Crocker." This time, Miss Crocker did look, but her face did not change. Then, holding up her head, she gazed unblinkingly down at me. "See what they called us," I said, afraid that she had not seen. "That's what you are," she said coldly. "Now go sit down." I shook my head, realizing now that Miss Crocker did not even know what I was talking about. She had looked at the page and had understood nothing. So something to note here, grade 6, Miss Crocker is a Black woman, but she is a character who has seemed to somewhat accept the way things are. She doesn't quite see the injustice of the way that these Black children are, and even herself, are being treated. Or maybe she sees the injustice, but she doesn't think that there's anything that she can do about it. Okay, so she's not as offended as Little Man and Cassie are by the insides of these books. I said, "Sit down, Cassie." I started slowly toward my desk, but as the hickory stick sliced the tense air, I turned back around. "Miss Crocker," I said, "I don't want my book neither." The switch landed hard upon Little Man's upturned bottom. Miss Crocker looked questioningly at me as I reached up to her desk and placed the book upon it. Then she swung the switch 5 more times, and, discovering that Little Man had no intention of crying, ordered him up. "All right, Cassie," she sighed, turning to me. "Come and get yours." By the end of the school day, I had decided that I would tell Mama everything before Miss Crocker had a chance to do so. From 9 years of trial and error, I had learned that punishment was always less severe when I poured out the whole truth to Mama on my own, before she heard anything from anyone else. I knew that Miss Crocker had not spoken to Mama during the lunch period, for she had spent the whole hour in the classroom, preparing for the afternoon session. As soon as class was dismissed, I sped from the room, weaving a path through throngs of students, happy to be free. But before I could reach the 7th grade class building, I had the misfortune to collide with Mary Lou's father. Mr. Welliver looked down on me with surprise that I would actually bump into him, then proceeded to lecture me on the virtues of watching where one was going. Meanwhile, Miss Crocker briskly crossed the lawn to Mama's class building. By the time I escaped Mr. Welliver, she had already disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. Mama's classroom was in the back. I crept silently along the quiet hall and peeped cautiously into the open doorway. Mama, pushing a strand of her long, crinkly hair back into the bun at the base of her slender neck, was seated at her desk, watching Miss Crocker thrust a book before her. "Just look at that, Mary," Miss Crocker said, thumping the book twice with her forefinger. "A perfectly good book ruined. Look at that broken binding and those footmarks all over it." Mama did not speak as she studied the book. "And here's the one Cassie wouldn't take," she said, placing a second book on Mama's desk with an outraged slam. "At least she didn't have a tantrum and stomp all over hers. I tell you, Mary, I just don't know what got into those children today. I always knew Cassie was rather high-strung, but Little Man, he's always such a perfect little gentleman." Mama glanced at the book I had rejected and opened the front cover so that the offensive pages of both books faced her. "You say Cassie said it was because of this front page that she and Little Man didn't want the books?" Mama asked quietly. "Yes, ain't that something?" Miss Crocker said, forgetting her teacher training school diction in her indignation. "The very idea! That's on all the books, and why they got so upset about it, I'll never know." "You punished them?" asked Mama, glancing up at Miss Crocker. "Well, I certainly did. Whipped both of them good with my hickory stick. Wouldn't you have?" When Mama did not reply, she added defensively, "I had a perfect right to." Of course they did, Daisy. Or of course you did, Daisy, Mamma said, turning back to the books again. They disobeyed you. But her voice was so quiet and non-committal that I knew Miss Crocker was not satisfied with her reaction. Well, I thought you would have wanted to know, Mary, in case you wanted to give them a piece of your mind also. Mamma smiled up at Miss Crocker and said rather absently, Yes, of course, Daisy. Thank you. Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out some paper, a pair of scissors, and a small brown bottle. Miss Crocker, dismayed by Mamma's seeming unconcern for the seriousness of the matter, thrust her shoulders back and began moving away from the desk. You understand that if they don't have those books to study from, I'll have to fail them both in reading and composition, since I plan to base all my lessons around... She stopped abruptly and stared in amazement at Mamma. Mary, what in the world are you doing? Mamma did not answer. She had trimmed the paper to the size of the books and was now dipping a gray-looking glue from the brown bottle onto the inside cover of one of the books. Then she took the paper and placed it over the glue. Mary Logan, do you know what you're doing? That book belongs to the county. If somebody from the superintendent's office ever comes down here and sees that book, you'll be in real trouble. Mamma laughed and picked up the other book. In the first place, no one cares enough to come down here. And in the second place, if anyone should come, maybe he could see all the things we need. Current books for all our subjects, not just somebody's old throwaways. Desks, paper, blackboards, erasers, maps, chalk. Her voice trailed off as she glued the second book. Biting the hand that feeds you. That's what you're doing, Mary Logan. Biting the hand that feeds you. Again, Mamma laughed. If that's the case, Daisy, I don't think I need that little bit of food. With the second book finished, she stared at a small pile of 7th grade books on her desk. Well, I think you're spoiling those children, Mary. They've got to learn how things are sometime. Maybe so, said Mamma, but that doesn't mean they have to accept them. And maybe we don't either. Miss Crocker gazed suspiciously at Mamma. Although Mamma had been a teacher at Great Faith for 14 years, ever since she had graduated from Crandon Teacher Training School at 19, she was still considered by many of the other teachers as a disrupting maverick. That means she's kind of like a troublemaker. Her ideas were always a bit too radical, and her statements a bit too pointed. The fact that she had not grown up in Spokane County, but in the Delta, made her even more suspect, and the more traditional thinkers, like Miss Crocker, were wary of her. Well, if anyone ever does come from the county and sees Cassie's and Little Man's books messed up like that, she said, I certainly won't accept the responsibility for them. It will be easy enough for anyone to see whose responsibility it is, Daisy, by opening any 7th grade book. Because tomorrow, I'm going to mess them up, too. Miss Crocker, finding nothing else to say, turned imperiously and headed for the door. I dashed across the hall and awaited her exit, then crept back. Mamma remained at her desk, sitting very still. For a long time she did not move. When she did, she picked up one of the 7th grade books and began to glue again. I wanted to go and help her, but something warned me that now was not the time to make my presence known, and I left. I would wait until the evening to talk to her. There was no rush now. She understood. And that is the end of chapter 1. Don't worry, not all of the chapters are quite as long as that one, so hopefully we won't have to have so many different parts of a video in the future.